My name is Linda Joy Jackson. I am a Senior Business Director at HopeWorks. My pronouns are she and her. I just want to tell you a little bit about what we do, especially for those who were not here yesterday, who we are and what we do. So we are an organization that builds generational wealth in communities that have been disenfranchised, ignored, and marginalized. How we do that is we train people, we hire them for 6 months in our businesses. This is one of the businesses which you'll see teaching people how to be trauma informed. And then our promise to them is to get them full-time employment. So I could tell you, but it's a little bit better if I show you.
No breaks.
With a focus on skill development, real-world job experience, and trauma-informed care, HopeWorks propels young adults into long-term living wage careers that put them on the path for healing and financial stability.
Hello, I'm Sakina Brody. I am the marketing coordinator here at HopeWorks.
My name's Anna Jones. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships here at HopeWorks.
Currently, I'm a web development intern.
I'm still a trainee while also doing Coursera certification.
I work in the GIS department for American Water and Asset Control.
Our young people believe in what we're doing here. They believe in the work that they're doing and the skills that they're learning. So they're referring their friends and family to come and join the HopeWorks community.
So I came here, checked it out, I took a tour. The tour was great. It was a lot of valuable information that I knew I needed, so I felt like this was the place for me to be.
HopeWorks trainees receive stipends while learning high-demand tech skills such as front-end web development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and geographic information systems, which includes data analysis.
Everyone very nice. The space felt homey. Never been in such a welcoming place too. It was pretty sick.
I feel like everyone here is just so approachable and empathetic, and I didn't really get that in all of my previous work experiences. Come for the abundance of resources, come for the really kind atmosphere, and just come to grow.
Why not come? Because I feel like personally, if you're definitely one of those people that wants to make a career for yourself, wants to build your future up, I feel like you should definitely at least come to see what they have to offer. You can come here, you can at least get some type of training, you can get paid for doing your training.
I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I needed guidance. I needed direction. And now I'm an example of what can happen if you come to HopeWorks and you take it seriously.
HopeWorks helps you get a lot of things. It helps you work towards a lot of goals, and it helps you work towards getting things done.
Professionally, I'm learning how to communicate more with my peers and learning just how to speak up for myself and getting some passive leadership skills, I want to say, as well as problem solving. But personally, I'm just growing as a person here.
I feel like HopeWorks has helped me in terms of connections and professionalism, confidence in my skill set, and also other things such as like being able to move out, get my own place, and just financially be stable and well off.
HopeWorks provides web design and development, GIS services, and trauma training to companies all over the country. Clients include Comcast, Subaru, American Water, the Sixers, and many others. HopeWorks also solves companies' workforce challenges by building custom internship and training pathways for hard-to-fill positions. Over 100 HopeWorks young professionals are placed in full-time employment each year, with the average salary of over $42,000 and a retention rate of over 88%.
Yeah, it helped me land my dream job at Subaru of America.
HopeWorks young professionals find value in the programs that they receive here, the support they receive here, and our trauma-informed environment.
It honestly teaches you so many skills, people skills that, I only got from HopeWorks.
And I remember someone would say like, hope works if you let it work. And if you allow that same mentality and energy to be your whole process here, like you would literally come out of it a much better person with the things that you need, and you have a way better foot forward in like your career path or anything that you want to do.
Have been able to prepare me for anything that I want to do. I feel like there's limitless opportunities, connections. I feel like I'm able to take on whatever the future offers me. So I'm excited about it.
So that's us as an organization. This year we're on track to get between 125 people jobs to 200. We have offices in both Philadelphia and in New Jersey. We were not always this successful. One of the things that has made us successful is by stopping to ask the question, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And so when we change that question and we begin to work in a trauma-informed way, things begin to change. We begin to be able to help people at another level. So I want to introduce the team that really keeps us honest. They train all of our new employees. They have trained all over the tri-state area and also here. I moved to Florida a couple years ago. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you, Lindsay. So yes, we are the HopeWorks training team. We've done some stuff on a local level, on a national level. We also even had the opportunity of working with some med students in Iraq. So we are always looking forward to talk about trauma and toxic stress and wellness and all those things. So my name is Jace Elam. My pronouns are he, they. I am the HopeWorks training team lead.
And my name is Angel. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a HopeWorks training team intern.
So today we are here to talk about self-care and emotional regulation, because that is something that we lack as a society. That is something that we don't prioritize heavily, and we want to make sure that we are very intentional about talking about that with you all today.
And so, to start the presentation, I'd like to go over our workshop objectives for today. Today we're going to shift the perspective of self-care and reframe emotional regulation and equity lens, and create and practice our safety plans. So before we actually begin the presentation, I'd like to give you all a heads up that the things we may cover, at any point if it makes you unsafe or uncomfortable, you can step out and come back in whenever you are prepared. And once again, before we begin the presentation, we also might have some activities we'd like you all to participate in. So we'd like to take a pledge. So if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear to participate in all activities. So that everyone here looks
Let's
silly.
do that one again, because it got real quiet with that second one. I solemnly swear to participate in all activities
So that everyone here looks silly.
Because if we all do the activities together, we all get to look silly together, and nobody actually feels silly, right? So, like I said, we're talking about emotional regulation. We're talking about self-care, and we typically talk about trauma and all those things. We're not going to be talking about trauma today. However, sometimes as we start talking and discussing about our self-care practices and our emotional regulation practices, sometimes that may bring up some stuff for folks. So again, just like Angel said, if you start to feel overwhelmed at any point, you start to feel like it's bringing up something for you, feel free to leave. That is all a part of being trauma-informed. We're giving you the space to take care of yourself and to practice some emotional regulation. So what is emotional regulation? So it is the ability to return to a healthy baseline after experiencing levels of stress, right? And that's not something that you're either born with or born without. It is a skill that you build and practice. And for most of us, that is not a skill that we were taught. When you're a kid and you start crying about something, it's like, stop crying before I give you something to cry about, right? We don't get the skills to actually figure out, how do I stop crying? You're just told that you need to stop. Or if you get really excited and you're really hyper and you're jumping all around, you're not really told how to calm down. You're not really supported with the calming down process. You're kind of just expected that you need to just sit still, be quiet, right? So we're going to talk about emotional regulation and how to do that as a practice and how to do that as a skill. So first, we're going to do our very first activity. I'd like for everyone to stand up. We just did that pledge. This is a very simple activity. Nothing too complicated. I just want you to do the things that I call out for you to do, right? Very simple, no tricks, none of that. Don't worry about finishing each task. Just move on to the next thing when I say it, okay? You all ready? All right, so jump up and down. Spin in a circle. Put your hands above your head. Touch your head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Count backwards from 10. Say your favorite color 3 times. Jump up and down again. Spin in a circle. Jump up and down. Spin in a circle. Alright, everybody can have a seat. feeling today? You feeling better after that? We all got to be silly together, so we don't feel as silly, right? Did that give you anything difficult to do? No. So like jumping up and down for me probably was the hardest thing. I heard your knee click. I don't like that. But okay, so what was the fourth thing that I told you to do? Nope. Does anybody know what the fourth thing was? No. You're the only person that knew what it was. So it was head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Why did nobody else remember that? Because I made you enter a state of stress. So when you are stressed out, you get adrenaline and cortisol pumping through your body. And what that does is it decreases your short-term memory. And think about the times when you get stressed out and you forget what you were doing. Right? You're supposed to do something really, really important and you go to a room to grab something and you completely forgot what you were doing. So we did that and it was a very fun game. It wasn't a stressful, overwhelming experience, was it? No. But I still made you enter a state of stress because I got that adrenaline pumping in your body and you forgot what we were doing, what order it was in. It wasn't something that you were supposed to be paying attention to, so you couldn't focus on it, right? So just imagine what that's like long term, right? When you're experiencing stress long term, when you're experiencing a pandemic, when you are someone who's experiencing abuse as a child, right? Imagine what that's like, 18 years of your life, right? Imagine what that's like, 9 months of a pregnancy, and then 18 months of your child's life, right? So I'd like for y'all to think about that stress that you felt in your body, even if it didn't feel stressful, and just imagine what that feels like long term and what that does to your brain and your body. So that is why emotional regulation is so important, because we would like for you to not be operating out of a state of stress all the time. Even if you have stressful things that you're experiencing, emotional regulation is how you help yourself get back to a good baseline so that you can be prepared and focus on the things that you need to focus on and accomplish the things that you need to do.
So now let me introduce you to your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. So your prefrontal cortex is normally used for your general thinking or your planning or decision making. So let me give you an example. Say you have like a date night coming up, you need to figure out where you're going to go, what you're going to wear, what time you want to meet. All your decision process in that example is your prefrontal cortex. And one thing about the prefrontal cortex is that it's generally fully developed around the age of 25. But trauma and toxic stress can actually, trauma and toxic stress can make it so that your prefrontal cortex develops more slowly. So for most people, it's generally around 25. But if you're someone who's experienced trauma your entire life, it might take you until you're about 30 or 35. And next we have the amygdala. So unlike the prefrontal cortex, requires no thinking from your amygdala. In fact, it is your general emotion response. So your fight or flight senses.
So your amygdala takes over, and that is how you get that adrenaline and cortisol pumping, because if you start jumping around and running in circles, your brain is like, oh my God, something dangerous must be happening, right? Because when do you ever run around like that? So your amygdala is what takes over when you're experiencing stress and danger. Your amygdala is pretty much fully formed by the time you're born. That's why babies cry so much, because they're scared of absolutely everything. They don't know what safety is because they haven't been introduced to it. And that is why it's important for, not just for emotional regulation for ourselves as adults, but teaching children emotional regulation, because they need to learn nurturing, they need to learn care, they need to learn and understand what safety actually is, because you use your amygdala more than your prefrontal cortex in your childhood development, because you don't have access to your prefrontal cortex. And it's important to hone and grow those skills in children especially, because what happens when you experience trauma from an early age is you become used to it. And your brain normalizes trauma, and your brain normalizes chaos. So you feel safer in dangerous environments. And that is not what we want children to experience, right? Because then that leads to other things and more danger later down the line. So as we're talking about emotional regulation and self-care practices, we want to pull people away from their amygdala and support them with using their prefrontal cortex. Because your prefrontal cortex is where you want to be most of your life, right? You want to be able to think and process things. You don't want to be operating out of fear and stress and danger.
So now we have the self-care plan. So your self-care plan is like a set of daily activities that can basically get you through a day.
So your self-care plan is proactive. It's preventative. This is what you do for yourself holistically all the time. You're making sure that you are practicing good self-care. You're taking care of yourself. What would you define self-care as? Just someone call on something.
Getting a massage.
Getting a massage? Okay. Someone else.
Setting boundaries.
Setting
what times I don't receive calls.
Nice, very nice. That's one that a lot of people don't think about as self-care, but like telling people no or not answering the phone when certain people call me, that's self-care. Anyone else? Would anybody else like to share an example of self-care?
Me time?
Me time, absolutely. Taking some time for yourself. So, typically when we talk about self-care, we get a lot of like responses that are luxurious, right? So let's take a look at some of these luxurious examples of self-care.
Tell us. T-Mobile. 3 words for you. Treat yourself. Once a year, Donna and I spend a day treating ourselves. What do we treat ourselves to?
Clothes.
Treat yourself.
Massages.
Treat yourself.
Fine leather goods.
Treat yourself.
It's the best day of the year.
The best day of the year! The point of this is to pamper yourself. It's a 1 day a year I allow myself to be selfish.
Ooh, cupcakes.
Those are all for me, Jerry.
I would like 3 big-ass diamonds surrounded by their own set of tiny-ass diamonds.
Welcome to Nirvana, the plaza at Eagleton.
Needles in your face, pleasure in your base.
All the sushi is made from fish previously owned by celebrities.
This is Peter Bogdanovich's saltwater eel.
Mmm, Bogdana delish. If you could blow big money on one thing, what would it be?
Treat yourself. In Beverly Hills.
Treat yourself 2017.
And it's the biggest one yet.
I really want this dress, and I like this crystal beetle.
Cashmere socks, velvet pants.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
This is insane.
You're gonna treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
I'm gonna treat myself.
Treat yourself.
I'm gonna go ahead and treat myself. It's the best day of the year.
So when y'all do self-care, you feel like you tend to focus on these types of things? If you did this all the time, if that was your only self-care practice, how would you feel? Yes, absolutely. So this is important stuff, right? Because it's good to take care of yourself in doing things that are pleasurable, that are fun experiences. Buy yourself nice things, go have a nice dinner, traveling and doing things like that. It's good to do those things. Those are things that we typically put off because we can't afford them. We don't have time. We have other things. We have other priorities that we need to focus on. It's good to do these things, and it's good to practice these things and take care of ourselves in this way. And it can make us feel really selfish when we choose to spend money on getting new clothes or doing things like that instead of spending it on somebody else that needs it and someone's asking you for something. It is important to do that, and I highly encourage people to do things like this. Maybe not as extreme as this. I don't know what I would do with cashmere socks. Like, I don't see the purpose in that. That seems a little excessive to me. But it is good to buy things that make you feel good and surround yourself with things that make you feel good. Again, knowing yourself within your own means, right? But we also talk about the behind-the-scenes self-care. And the behind-the-scenes self-care is just as important, if not more important, even though it's the stuff that we don't really want to do, right? So we tend to put off self-care for 2 reasons. The first one is for the social media stuff. It's the stuff that's like, it's showy and it's nice, but like I don't feel like I deserve it, or maybe I don't feel like I can afford that right now, or maybe I need to spend money someplace else and whatever, right? But the other reason why we put off self-care I don't want to do this stuff. I still have not done my taxes. Exactly. I don't want to. I have to. And the longer you put stuff like that off, the worse it's going to be, right? I don't want to be IRS. I don't want to deal with that. But the behind-the-scenes self-care is the stuff that's going to support your future goals. It's also going to support your ability to practice the social media self-care and to do the fun things that you enjoy, right? It's really important things that we put off. So we tend to separate this into our daily stuff, which is like there are certain things that you need to do every day, right? Washing dishes and taking care of your home and like doing those things. I can't stand washing dishes. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Like no, like I literally physically, I'll wash a couple dishes and my body's like, sit down. I have chronic illness. That's like a part of that. But also a part of my chronic illness, I need to go to the doctor. And that's not going to be an everyday thing. That might not even be a weekly thing. But I need to do those. I need to go to the doctor. I need to get checkups done. I need to do things like that. Who here enjoys going to the doctor? Because I don't. No one enjoys that. It's a very unpleasant experience. You go to the doctor, you sit and you wait forever. You finally get back there, and then they tell you something that they could have told you on a phone call. But it's still important because you never know what you might be missing out on, right? Going to the dentist, doing laundry, doing taxes, doing all those important things that we put off because we don't want to, that's still a part of taking care of ourselves. And when we talk about shifting the focus of self-care, we're taking it away from it being a luxury. Self-care is not a luxury. It's not something that you do for fun to make yourself, like yes, it can be, but you need to practice self-care. This is not a thing that you can just say, well, I don't need to do self-care. It's not important. It is important because if you're not doing self-care, you can't take care of all the people that you want to take care of. You can't take care of your family. You can't take care of your kids. You can't help your mama out when she needs you to do whatever thing she's asked you to do for the millionth time that you don't even understand why she wants you to do this, but it's here to neither here nor there. So practicing self-care is how you get to do all those other things. So in those bags that we gave you, there is a safety pin and some beads. I would like for you to take the safety pin out, and you're going to think about what are the things that you do for self-care. Don't just think about your social media self-care. Think about that behind-the-scenes stuff that you really don't want to do. And I would like for you to take some time to put some beads on that safety pin that represent the things that you do for self-care. This serves as like a visual reminder that you need to take care of yourself. You need to do things to support yourself, right? And the really cool thing about this is that typically we just give you the beads and the safety pins, but because we're at this lovely conference, there's actually keychains on your table, and you can actually put them on the keychains if you like. You can put it wherever, you can keep it and put it on whatever it is that you have. But this is also really helpful because this can just be a thing that you hold on to on your wrist. You can put this on your bag or whatever. I keep mine on my lanyard. This is not my actual safety plan. This is not my actual self-care plan, but I keep mine on my own keys. And it reminds me, okay, when I get home, I'm going to take a nap. When I get home, I'm going to take a bubble bath. I need to get some dessert. And it's just a nice visual reminder of all the things that I like to do for self-care. But I also have a dingy white bead on my self-care plan because I hate doing laundry. And I have to look at my keys every day and remind myself I didn't do laundry. And that is what prompts me to actually then do my laundry because I have to keep being reminded, look, I need to do my laundry. I need to do my laundry. So take some time with that. And then afterwards, we'll spend some time with sharing. All right. So would anybody like to share what they put on their self-care plan?
Just this morning, I was thinking about how nice it would be to watch the sun set and the sun rise. And so I just got colors that represented the sun.
That's beautiful. I like that. I'm a little bit lucky because I live in an apartment and I don't have to get out of bed to see the sunrise and sunset because it comes like right.
Nice.
Anyone else? Mom, y'all did the pledge. Oh.
I have blue for bubble bath. I have red for emo dumping. Like getting up and my journal or my notes or the voice thing just getting it out. I'm talking about sometimes I wake up and I just have so much on my mind, or I get ready to go to bed and there's so much on my mind. And so I have to pause, not go to bed with it, not get out of bed with it, and just say it or write it out. So taking time for that. And then I have purple for prayer. I'm taking time to prayer. And that's different from emotive. I have to separate those two. And then I have peach for walking, which I'm just starting to do.
Nice.
So.
That's very nice. I like that you said emo dumping, because that's kind of how that's basically what it is. What I used to do is I would take my headphones and I'd go, like, as I'm walking home from work or like whatever, I'd have my headphones on and I'd turn on the voice memo thing on my phone, and then I would just complain and rant all the way home. Typically, it wouldn't even record. Like, it'd be a good way to process what my day was, but typically it wouldn't even record properly because I'm walking home. So all you hear is in the background, and that doesn't pick it up on the phone. But, like, I felt better, and I didn't even need to listen to it afterwards. I didn't really care. I just got it out, right? And then it just kind of looks like you're on the phone. Someone over on this side.
So I take naps when I can, or get rest when I can. I do make time to laugh, so I keep on my phone the Instagram favorites so nobody actually uses it. But I use them, let's say funny, so I make sure that I laugh every day. I have to remind myself to, because I work a desk job, primarily a desk job, so getting up and making sure that I move. And I hydrate, so I drink a lot of water. I make sure that I drink a lot of water throughout the day, and I pray.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. Would anybody else like to share?
I talk about this a lot, but I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And purple was originally my favorite color as a child. Little did I know that purple would be the awareness color for domestic violence. Little did I know that I would be a victim. So I put purple in here as a reminder that my past does not define me, and I always have to move beyond that. And as I was going through my healing after domestic violence, orange became my favorite color. So I wear these two colors a lot. And this is my reminder that my past does not define me.
Thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable. I really appreciate that. And like I said before, we like to cultivate safe spaces. We do not, number one, we're not going to tell people, oh, well, we're not talking about trauma today, so we can't talk about that. We want you to talk about what it is that comes to your heart and what it is that is important to you. And I appreciate when people feel safe enough to do that in our space, because that means we're doing our job. I love when people share their experiences and share their self-care plans and their safety plans and all that good stuff, because it's good to talk about. We don't talk about what we do for ourselves, right? We don't talk about that as a society unless we're talking about that social media stuff that we're showing off, like, oh, look at these new boots I just bought. Oh, I took care of myself. Oh, I took this bubble bath and I put all of this stuff in it. But like talking about our safety plans and our self-care plans in the context of like, when I'm stressed out, I need to vent about it. When I'm stressed out, I need to do this. That's really important. It opens up a conversation, and it helps other people to think about their own self-care and their own safety plan practices and how they can support themselves better. Because a lot of the times we do this, and there's people that don't really know what to put down. They don't participate in the activity because they don't feel like they have any emotional regulation techniques. They don't feel like they have any self-care practices. And that's really important to get people to really think about that. So thank you all who shared and participated.
So along with your self-care plan, there's also your safety plan. So your safety plan can be used to keep yourself regulated throughout an entire day or any day. And it also can be used anywhere or any time. So like, for example, recently this Monday to actually get here, we took 2 flights, which were actually my very first 2 flights. And I personally used my safety plans that I came up with to keep myself from having maybe an anxiety attack, but making sure that I'm comfortable in where I am, even if I had to take something that was completely new to me.
Yep. So your safety plan your self-care plan is supposed to be proactive to make sure that you start your day well and rested and all of those things. But your safety plan is
what you do when something happens that you maybe weren't prepared for, you weren't expecting it. And instead of getting like super bent out about it or super frustrated or stressed out, you practice your safety plan to help you calm back down. Instead of letting those emotions take over and maybe you do something a little ridiculous or maybe you start to just shut down, you practice your safety plan to help regulate those emotions. So think of your self-care plan as the glass of water or fuel or whatever it is. Maybe you have a giant cup of coffee in the morning. If you're practicing self-care, you get a really big cup of coffee, and that's what energizes you throughout your entire day. Every time something happens that's stressful or frustrating, you pour out a little bit, and you pour out a little bit, and there's a little bit less to keep you going for the day. Your safety plan is what you use to refill it. But the more you need to use your safety plan, the less you get back. So you want to make sure you're doing both of these things so that not only do you have something to refill when you start to get empty, but that you start with a bigger container, that you start with a bigger vessel and more energy throughout the day. Does that make sense? So in order to practice your safety plan, in order to use it effectively, you need to know when and how to use it. And that's really hard to do if you're used to being stressed out all the time because you might not be able to recognize when you start to feel stressed. So I want y'all to think about, where do you feel stress physically in your body? Just name out a part of your body. Neck? Chest?
Your head.
Head, yep. Stomach. I'm absolutely somebody that feels it in my stomach. If I start getting stressed out, my stomach starts to hurt really bad. Or I'll feel it in my chest because it feels like it's starting here and it's coming back up. Where else? Anybody, when you get stressed out, you start to feel real hot all over? Or maybe your heart starts pumping, or you start to sweat, things like that. Get those random aches and pains. So we start to notice stress in our bodies sometimes before we even notice it emotionally or cognitively. But that's not the only way we notice stress. Sometimes it's the emotional part, right? Where it's like your emotions, not just the actual individual emotion that you feel. Yes, you may feel sad or you may feel angry, but the way that you experience that emotion, right? The intensity of the emotion. Are you feeling really, really angry, like angrier than usual? Or are you feeling really, really sad? Or really, really flat, where it's like, this would normally irritate me, but I don't even care anymore. Or maybe it makes it easier for you to go back and forth between emotions when you get stressed out. Where you can be really, really happy 1 minute, and then you're really, really angry, and then something else happens, and you're really, really happy again. Yesterday I gave the example of if I'm stressed out, sometimes things will make me laugh a lot harder than they should. And somebody tells a really corny joke, and I'm laughing for like 15 minutes over a joke that wasn't that funny to begin with. The joke's not that funny. I'm just so stressed out, I needed an excuse to laugh. Social. How are social relationships impacted? So for some people, that means they pull away from people. They don't want to be around anybody. They don't want to talk to anybody. For other people, they start hanging out with their friends even more because that's an excuse to get away from their own problems. They can talk to them. They can deal with their problems because that person's problems are easier to deal with than their own. Cognitive. For some people, when you get stressed out, your brain goes completely blank. You can't think. You can't focus. That's when people start dropping classes. That's when people start doing things that they start sleeping a lot because they don't really want to do anything. They're bored, so they just fall asleep. Things like that. Or maybe being hyperactive with your thoughts and you're kind of bouncing back and forth from different thoughts to different thoughts and doing different projects because you're like, okay, well, let me do this. Okay, well, let me do this other thing. And you kind of can't focus. Behavior. For some people, that may be substance use. For some people, that may be destructive behaviors, right? Where you're breaking things or throwing things. I used to be the type of person that if I got stressed out, I'm breaking stuff, I'm throwing stuff. I got it from my dad. I come by it. He got mad once and threw a whole carpet cleaner across the room. But that can also be nurturing behaviors. It doesn't have to be negative behaviors. It can be nurturing behaviors where you're taking care of people more than usual. It can feel negative for the person that's being smothered by all that love and affection, but it's still a positive type of behavior. And then professional. For some people, they bury themselves in their work when they get stressed out because it's so much easier to focus on work if the problems that you're having are at home. For other people, I don't want to do anything, and I'm not going to do my work at home. I'm not going to do my work at school. I'm not going to do my work at work. I'm just going to just sit here, do what I want to do. I'm on my phone. I'm watching movies and doing things like that. So as I talked about all these things, did anybody recognize anything about themselves? Maybe something new that they hadn't even thought about before, and they recognize that this is how their stress manifests. Projects.
Yeah, I started to do things.
Say that again?
Yeah, start to do things like applying for new certifications and just filling up the plate. So I have to deal with what's already on the plate. So I just create a whole different reality of things.
Yeah. It's like, can't nobody ask me to do anything because you know what? I built my schedule. It's booked. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that because I'm doing this other stuff over here. It wasn't on your schedule yesterday, but it is now, and nobody can interrupt it. Anybody else?
I would say for me, I'm a cognitive. When I'm stressed, it's like you say about everything's foggy. But as soon as I come up under that stress, it's like, wow, the light bulb comes on, and I can focus on everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we're like really busy on the team, I'm like we're in one brain cell moment. That's our one brain cell moment. We have a lot of stuff going on and we're super busy. We take one brain cell and we all just pass it around on the team because none of us can really focus on stuff because we have a million things to do. I think our team works pretty well because we have a lot of the same like brain processing. It works well, but it also works terrible because again we have a lot of the same brain processes. So the stuff that makes one person anxious is probably going to make everybody else anxious. This is like all those things. But like yes, we go brain fog, and then some of us might not have that same brain fog, and we kind of just pass it back and forth. So having a team to help you and to be able to recognize these things, you might not even recognize. I might call up the exact thing that you do, and you're like, I don't do that. But the person at your table probably know that you do exactly that. And we'll notice things about other people before we notice them about ourselves. So Kate, who was previously my supervisor, she worked with us on this project for a really long time, and then she actually got a new job previously, about a month ago at this point. We would notice things about each other, and we could recognize when the other person was stressed out and overwhelmed. Even as we're like presenting together, we kind of like tag in and tag out because we could see the other person getting overwhelmed, right? And that comes from working with people, and that comes from being around each other and knowing each other. But that comes from communication too, right? Because you talk to people, and in order for you to really start to pick up on when that person is stressed out, because for some people, Kate is a fast mover, and for the folks that worked with us and would probably recognize a lot of that, she talks really, really fast, right? She's just kind of like that. But when she's stressed out, it gets even worse. But you wouldn't notice that it was worse unless you're talking to her. She's like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. So that's when you start to pick up on those patterns. We have to communicate with our teams. We have to communicate with our families about what's going on in our lives. So they can recognize this isn't just how you are. This is a stress thing. And this is when I can tap in. This is when I can tap out. And this is when we can exchange that, right? So a part of self-care and safety planning has to include being able to rely on other people. And that is a really, really hard thing to do, especially if everything you've been told about other people from your experiences is that people are not reliable. But you have to rely on people, unfortunately, because we can't do everything by ourselves.
So moving over back to our safety plans. So we have two different safety plans that you can cover. There's your visible safety plan, and we'll get to your visible safety plan as well. So your invisible safety plan is generally something that's more internal and doesn't require any external resources, such as like taking deep breaths. I've heard people like to pray, or even saying the alphabet backwards in your head. It's just something simple but quick to do that you can do at any moment.
So the example that I give is if you were
stuck in an elevator and you didn't have your phone and there was nothing in your pockets, what would you do to keep you from being in the corner crying on the floor? That's an extreme example, but if you don't have other resources at your disposal, what are the things that you do to support yourself to calm yourself down? That's a pretty unlikely scenario, but there will be times when you don't have access to the things that you typically use, right? If the thing that you do when you're stressed out is you vent to your friend, there will be a day when you don't have that friend to vent to. There will be a day when you don't have your phone to listen to music. There will be moments when you don't have your journal or your sketchbook or whatever it is. So making sure that you have things that you can rely on that are internal is really important so that you can do it anywhere, anytime, whenever you need it. So I'm going to walk you through a deep breathing technique called square breathing. It is a technique that is used by snipers to help decrease their heart rate. So if you feel like whatever you got going on is not going to be helped by deep breathing, just know that snipers are doing this right now somewhere, and it's helping them. So whatever you got going on is probably not as stressful as whatever a sniper is doing. So you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds. All right, so we're going to do this together, all right? Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. How y'all feeling? Yeah. So I've done this with middle schoolers. I've done it with high schoolers. It works for them. Like they might be skeptical about it when we first started talking about it. But even if they say, "Oh, that did nothing," they're quieter when we finish doing it. So even if it's just a moment to take a deep breath and stop talking for a second and stop thinking about anything for a second, even if it's just for those few seconds while you're doing it, that's helpful, right? Like even if I just take a moment to just stop talking, be still, that's all I really need sometimes. So that is a practice that I will share with you, and you can share that with other people and see how that works in your own personal lives. Again, in that pouch we gave you, there is a card, and that's for your safety plan. So your self-care plan, it's great to have like a cute little visual reminder. When you are stressed out, you need actual instructions on what to do. So I'd like for everyone to take a few moments and write down some things that would be on their invisible safety plan, the things that you do that don't require any other resources. You do them internally that are for you. So take a few moments to do that. So would anybody like to share what is on your invisible safety?
Breathe, pray, exhale, and visualize nature or a peaceful scenery.
Nice, very nice. Anyone else?
Yeah, sometimes I just relax and think about things I've done right in the past, things, rather than negatives. And you get to this point and you only want to look at things you've done wrong when you have done most things right. So I focus on the positive.
That's very good. It's really easy for us when we do something wrong to just dwell on that and think about that all the time. But like to actually remind yourself of the things that you've done well, to celebrate those things is really important. Celebrating is a really important part of self-care and safety planning, because like if all I did was think about everything I've messed up, I wouldn't be able to do anything ever again because I wouldn't want to. What is the visible safety plan?
So the visible safety plan generally is the quite opposite of your visible safety plan, of course. But it also requires something that's external. For example, I like to listen to music, so maybe you'd like a phone or a laptop, maybe your headphones. That's something more so that would be on your visible safety plan.
Sometimes it can be fidgets, stress balls, fidget spinners, whatever. One thing that I have in the office when our interns are like practicing their slides, because we get people who are very new to public speaking and they get really anxious with public speaking. So I will they'll start presenting and they'll start like practicing
something and they're like nervous and they're not, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, stop talking, take this, and I'll hand them a Rubik's Cube or like something that they can play with in their hand. And it's like night and day, completely different experience. Like literally just having something, because it's something that your brain can focus on, and it takes you out of that amygdala and it puts you back into your prefrontal cortex. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And it calms you back down. It takes you out of the stress thing and it puts you back into the focus. So journaling, sketching, music, whatever that looks like for you. So take some time and write down some things for your visible safety plan. You want to have a good variety of different things, because sometimes the thing that you rely on the most is not going to be helpful for you in certain situations. One thing that I will also recommend is putting something that requires some physical movement, because that is how you get out of your stress response. So your stress response activates because your brain thinks you are in physical danger. Our brains process all stress and danger as physical danger. So the responses that you'll get will be like when you get butterflies in your stomach, that's because your blood is draining from your stomach and your digestive system into your arms and legs so that you can fight and run away from things. If you get all that adrenaline pumping, the best way to get rid of it is to use it. So maybe not actually running, but you might want to get up and go for a walk, or you might want to do some jumping jacks. You might want to do some stretches or something like that to help expend that extra energy. So again, take some time, write down some things for your safety plan, and then we'll talk about that.
I don't know if it is, but there's something I do for me. I always create expectations for myself. That is, I always create something that I'm looking forward to. Like, oh, this person is going to call me this time, this person is going to call me this time. Oh, I'm looking for something for my post office box, or I'm expecting this email, or I'm always creating something, and that enables me to look forward for something good. Something good. Always looking for something good. Something I'm expecting. And that keeps me going. I don't know if it fits.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we talk about self-care in our supervision frameworks at HopeWorks, like in our one-on-one conversations with our staff and the interns. We talk about self-care, but what we also talk about is what are you looking forward to, and that's a really important part, because when we're in places where we feel like we're stuck, it's important to think about, okay, I'm not always going to be stuck, so what am I going to do when I get out of the situation? What am I going to experience? That's a really good thing. Writing poetry. I love that.
I like to get away from the computer and look outside the windows in my office and look over the campus and see students going back.
That's really nice.
I just pick up my telephone and make a call to someone I like and talk as much as possible, even if it's flash. Just say it.
Crash, right?
If I crash and
sometimes it's good to just call people and talk. Like, you don't have anything to talk about. You just call them, and then you'll find something to talk about when you get on the phone. Does anybody else want to share?
Sometimes I just talk to myself and give myself a pep talk and encourage myself.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what you have to do, right? So when I'm doing something that I really, really don't want to do, I have to talk myself through it. Or, like I said already, I lose track of what I'm doing while I'm doing it sometimes. So I'll talk myself through what I'm doing. Like when I was getting packed to come down here, I'm like, okay, so I need to get this, and I need to get that. Don't go over there because you want to get distracted. Stay over here with the bag. But I have to do that to make sure I stay on track. Because for me, packing is a very stressful thing, and I try to leave it to the last possible minute, because otherwise I'll just end up taking stuff out the bag. So I'm like, oh, I need that real quick, and then I just never put it back in. So talking yourself through that is really important, and people kind of look at you funny sometimes, but like, I don't care. I need to do that. That's how I get through it.
There's nothing like cooking a good meal.
I agree with that.
And tasting it afterwards. And feeling like that's the best thing in the entire world. So cooking a nice, good meal and enjoying it, sitting and enjoying it.
Yes. I'm very sensitive about food, because if I'm trying to make something really good and it don't turn out how I wanted it to, that breaks my heart. Would anybody else like to share?
I'm also a news junkie. I can stay on news for 2-3 hours on news. I like to know what's happening locally and regionally and internationally. So I can stay on CNN, MSNBC for hours.
Fox.
No, as long as I don't have to grade or whatever, you know. But I'm a good jockey. I love news. Yeah.
I can't relate, but I'm glad that is something.
Oh yeah, very relaxing.
Yeah, I like listening to music, more especially Afro beats. You know, even when you can't dance, at least you shake your body.
I'm sure you know that. Afrobeat.
Would anybody else like to share? Oh.
If it's a situation where it's like interaction, I've been trying to verbalize it and say, wait, let me pause, let me process that.
Yes, absolutely. Communication can be a difficult thing to do, but it can actually resolve the issue and make sure that we move forward on better terms. Absolutely. I'm curious if anybody in here feels resistant to self-care and emotional regulation. Because we talk about this a lot and we try to encourage people to do it, but lately I've also noticed that some people are just not with it. And I'm curious if anybody is feeling that way and would like to share maybe why they're feeling that way.
That's not good.
I have those times, like if I'm feeling overwhelmed and like I want to cry, for instance, I resist that. I do not want to cry, but I have found that if I just release it, and the reason why I'm resistant to it, I think, is because it's like, what are you crying for? That's not going to solve anything, you know. And so I just, try to push that down and find something that seems logical, or acceptable to do when I really could use that emotional release.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because as we're growing up, we're taught that we need to suppress those emotional responses, right? Those emotional responses are critical to your actual growth and development because your stress response system is based around danger. Your body recognizes stress as danger, and that's how you process it. Your amygdala isn't just responsible for handling dangerous situations and handling when you're getting into a fight or when you're running from a bear. Your amygdala is responsible for those emotional responses. So when you are crying, that is your amygdala at work. That is that adrenaline and that cortisol, and you do have to release that because if you hold it within your body doesn't know what to do with it, and it thinks you're still in danger. It thinks you are still being hunted. It thinks you're still being chased. It thinks something terrible is happening, and you're still in that place. So if you are not releasing those emotions, all those other chemical responses are still happening in your body, right? So it's important to cry. It's important to laugh. It's important to get through those processes because that is how we release the stress. And it's not just when we talk about stress, we often talk about it as if it's just some like abstract concept. It's not. It's physical responses. It's biological responses. It's chemical responses inside of our body. And if we ignore that stress, it doesn't go away. It stays in your body and it continues to do the harm to your body that it's been doing. So if you're stressed out and your heart's beating a mile a minute and you're just like, I'm not stressed, it's fine, I'm going to ignore it, it's going to go away. No, your heart's going to keep beating like that. And that is what leads to the wear and tear on our bodies because as we ignore stress, the stress isn't ignoring you, it's still there. And that is why it's important to practice emotional regulation because if you don't sit down, your body will lay you.
That's really interesting that you said that because I kind of think like that when I come to, and I can only speak on the young black man because that's the only people that I really have contact with, the black male. And I've often wondered, in this generation here, we teach, well, a lot of people do, I don't, teach our boys to be so strong that it's a weakness to cry. It's a weakness to express your inner emotions. And it goes undressed. And just as you said, we're teaching them to suppress it, but it's not releasing it. It's still inside. They are subjected to getting stopped by police officers, getting guns held to their head, and there's never any therapy. So it was just really, and that's really something that's really in my heart. How do we get our, and for, like I said, I haven't been around, but how do we get our Black males to feel strong and still powerful, but be able to release their emotions, to be able to cry and still feel strong, to be able to, and it boils over into our relationships and marriages, because you suppress your, if I say I love you, if I say I'm scared, where does this put me? And it's just really something that really needs to be addressed.
So, do y'all mind if I get a little bit controversial?
No.
So I am a trainer. So I know a whole lot about how testosterone and estrogen work in the body, right? And one of the things that is a very common thing to talk about is how testosterone makes you violent. And testosterone makes you angry. It does not. It does not do that. What does is the way that we teach little boys that they cannot release their emotions. Because those emotions stay in your body. And just like what I talked about, those emotions stay in there, and if your heart rate's pumping all the time, it stays pumping all the time. And if you start feeling hot when you're stressed out, you want to keep feeling hot all the time. And that expresses itself in violence, right? That expresses itself in all sorts of destructive behaviors, and all sorts of self-destructive behaviors, and substance use, and all these other things, right? Emotional regulation, this conversation that we're having right now, that is the real answer for how we stop all of these other things, right? Because it's not about, oh, boys are just like that. They're not just like that. We're teaching them to be like that because we're telling them that they're not supposed to feel their emotions. They have emotions, and they need to know that they have emotions. So we need to support them with knowing how to express them. It's not that women are more emotional and men are more logical. What's illogical is the way that we're teaching them to behave. If we're teaching people universally how to express their emotions and how to be productive and how to do all these things, you don't have these sorts of problems out of people. And it's the expectations that you're supposed to be super, super strong, when really the strongest thing that you can do is be vulnerable with your emotions. That is a very, very difficult thing to do, to talk about your emotions and to talk about how you're feeling. It's not a chemical thing that you're just wired to be violent and dangerous, because there's plenty of people that are not. It's that we're teaching them to do that indirectly, right? Because we're not telling them, oh no, you need to be violent, you need to be angry all the time. But you're telling them that they're not allowed to be sad. If you take the sadness away, that just transforms into rage. So, that's my
Just to piggyback on that, I think the same thing happens to women. Because as a Black woman, I hear all the time, it's like a badge of honor, strong Black woman. You're a strong Black woman. And so if you're a mother, you got to be the strong mother. So we're not, I think I took a workshop and they talked about catch it, check it, and change it. So when I hear people say that in reference to me, I catch that, I check what they're saying, and I change that verbiage, that narrative, because I'm not a strong woman. I'm somebody who is trying, just like the next person. So if you have a meltdown, you have a 2-year-old, and you're in the grocery store, it doesn't make you any less strong. It doesn't make you any less of a woman or any less of a mother. If you need a therapist, right, it doesn't make you less strong. And I think just the narrative that we as people of color have kind of carried, and then we continue to say those things, and then we walk it out. We say it to our children, right, and then we say it to another mother. And sometimes we think it's a compliment, right? But sometimes that compliment really is like another layer. It's another burden that you just have to show up like that all the time. You have to show up like that on your job, so you don't ask questions because you think you're supposed to know it all because you're the strong woman, you're the strong professional. So I think just catching that, checking it, and changing it can do a lot for both males and females.
And not just internally, right? Checking people like, no, I'm not, actually, don't say that. That's not like you checking other people when they try. Like, okay, I know that you think that is a compliment, but
but that's actually harmful to me, and I don't appreciate hearing that, right? Like, it's important to check other people, because sometimes the things that we pass around as compliments, it just plays on our own personal insecurities, and it is important to let people know, like, no, actually, this is harmful. So yeah, thank you for sharing it, because that like narrative of strength and being strong can be harmful.
Okay, having positive emotional outlets is very important, very important. But it must be said that alcohol and drugs is not the solution. let's make it clear. Alcohol and drugs are not the solution to those things. Now, the key thing we need to focus is in friendship. We found out that our boys, don't know how to make good friends. If you make some good friends, you'll be able to overcome some obstacles. And I'm saying it because I have three boys. It's very hard for this guy to sustain friendships. And we, the older people, we know that friendships are very good. The reason why I don't get into trouble or whatever is because I have good friends with me. They tell me, don't do that. And I know that they are correct. So if you have some good friends, in my opinion, good friends, guys need to learn. And you see them get together, but those are not friends. Those are not their friends. If you have friends that get into trouble, alcohol, get away from him. Look for friends that will advise you, show you direction, and show you the right thing. If you do that, if you have some good friends, you'll be okay. Alcohol is not the answer. Drugs are not the answer. The good, in my opinion, is maintain a good friendships. That will really help you a lot. That's what I found in my head.
And that's true, but that's also a very hard thing to come by and to find, considering the way that our own cultural practices kind of play into all of that, and the way that other people are being raised and built in our communities. I really appreciate the conversations that we're having today. And I will be here all day for the conference, and we can continue to have these conversations. I appreciate everyone for sharing and being vulnerable and being able to have these kinds of conversations, because it can be a tricky and difficult thing to do. So I will be here. I'll be passing. I have my cards with me, and we can continue to have these conversations because we have lunch and like whatever else is going on. So thank you all so much.